And it's 40 hadith, and we've talked previously here about the blessings of 40 hadith. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Man hafidha ala ummati," whoever saves for my nation 40 hadith, Allah will make him stand on the Day of Judgment, faqiyan, as a scholar. And so there's this special quality that you'll find in the number 40. And there are many collections of hadith around, which are built around this hadith. So this is one of those texts. But unlike the other texts that I've covered on previous trips here and on different places that I've taught, this is not a text that I'm even going to claim to have studied. And I'm putting that as an open statement at the beginning. I'm not transmitting a text to you. It's not something that I've studied, who's under a sheikh, who studied under a sheikh, and it goes all the way back to the author. This is actually just a book I found off the internet. And I was just amazed. And I thought what I'd like to do is something slightly different to what I've done previously, is to do three things. There will be some opportunity, because it's a technical text, it's hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I can't just take it off the top of my head. I have to do justice to it. So there are some points where we will look at particular words, and there will be some kind of explanation of technical linguistic terms, but I'm trying to probably keep that to a minimum. The second thing is I'd like to link it to other texts so that people can maybe make notes and say, actually I can find out more by doing such and such, kind of signposting you into other books, which would then help us to explain the text a bit more. And the third thing is what I would like to call co-reflection. I'd like to actually just think about what the words, what the hadith means. And I'm not saying that we're going to study the text, but I'd like us to think about what do these actually mean and how do they apply. And that's very different to studying it. So for that reason, I'm hoping that people are going to be prepared to interact. And of course we have protection from making mistakes by the fact that Sheikh Muhammad Muslim is here. So he can always make sure that if we go too far off the track, that he can always bring us back, inshallah. And that's what I'm hoping. So they're my intentions for this particular text. So as I mentioned, the text is called 40 Hadith on Sufism. And interestingly, somebody asked me just as I was coming in, so, are you a Sufi? And I didn't know what to say. So I just smiled. And they says, no, we're saying off the record. Can you tell us off the record, are you a Sufi? And I still haven't got an answer to give to that person. But what I did want to do at the beginning of looking at this text is just to think about what does Sufism actually mean? And how does it differ from the concept of spirituality? Because in the end, we use English terms or Swedish terms, and they're the terms of our thinking for most of us. And especially when we're talking to people in dawah, you can't use certain. So I'm going to start with an exercise to throw you the deep end of co-reflection. Right. To do this, we need to be able to speak to each other. And if you're not willing to speak to each other, then the children are playing outside. Please feel free to join them. Anybody that's not willing to speak to the person next to you, apart from Sheikh Muhammad Muslim, he can't go and play with the kids. Oh, please, we need you. Right, so could you please just introduce yourself, tell the person next to you who you are and where you were born. Okay? No, just quite quickly. You don't have to. Just whoever's next to you, just tell the person next to you your name and where you were born. Right, great. We don't have all day. It was just a simple task. Right. Could you please tell me who your partner is and where he was born?
Yeah, this is David.
David?
He was born in south of Sweden.
In South?
In Stockholm, yeah.
In Stockholm.
Yes.
David, could you tell me who you're talking with?
Yes.
Okay, so Oasis from the south of Stockholm. Okay, could you tell me who your two friends are?
This is Pontus,
Okay,
and he's born in Stockholm.
okay. And I know that's correct, so you've been listening. Okay.
This is Johan, and he's born in Skärstund.
Right, I can't verify that, but I believe you. Could you tell me who this young man is?
Me?
Yes,
Tell you who he is.
yes.
He's Yusuf,
And?
he's born in Dewsbury.
Excellent. And I can verify that that's correct. Right, that was a very simple task. Right, second task is even simpler. Can you please just count to 5 to the person next to you in any language that you like? And the reverse. Okay, great. Now that shouldn't have been difficult. Right, it starts with 1 and ends with 5. Or if you're doing it in Urdu, it starts with ek and it ends with panch. Or if you're doing it in Arabic, it begins with wahid and it ends with khamsa. And if you're doing it in, all right, enough. But you got the story, right? You know 1 to 5. Right, now imagine, number 1 means you totally agree. Number 5 means you totally disagree. Load of rubbish. Okay? And 3, 2, and 4 are between. Number 1 is? Totally agree. Absolutely correct. Number 5, load of rubbish. Totally disagree. Right, this might require some compromise. Okay? Because you have to come up with a number for the statement that I'm going to give you. And they're not hadith, so they're all, you're entitled to disagree. Totally. All right? In fact, none of the statements I'm going to ask you about are hadith. Right, clear? Right, and if anybody doesn't want to participate, as I say, the children are outside, you can go and join them. How are you, sister? Good? Yes? Alhamdulillah. Right. Religion is for people who are afraid of going to hell. Whereas spirituality is for people who have already been there. I'll say it again. Religion is for people who are afraid of going to hell. Spirituality is for people who have already been there. Number 1, I totally agree with that. That 100%, I understand what's going on there. Yep, that's spot on. Number 5, what kind of rubbish is that? Okay, I'm going to give you 2 or 3 minutes to come up with one agreed number between the 3 of you. All right? Between the 2 of you. And Sheikh Muhammad Muslima is ummatan qanita lillah on his own. He's a nation. Okay. Have you already agreed? Oh, perfect. Oh, in German. German Arabic. MashaAllah. By the way, we're going to have a minute to do this, so be quick. Right. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Right, did anybody not come to an agreement? Did anybody not come to an agreement? All right, you agree on 2.5. That sounds like a 5 and a 1 split down the middle. Right, can I start with the 2.5 groups? Because this sounds interesting. Right, who said 5? And explain why. Was it a 5 and a...
No, it wasn't a 5.
Okay,
no,
good.
it could be 5.
Okay.
Probably for some people.
Right, explain. Who gave a 1? Did anybody give a 1 for this? They totally agree with this statement. Please, could you kind of give me a feel of why you think that's correct?
No, we talked about in general you have to, or you don't have to, but if you have suffered, then it's you're more maybe drawn to
Yeah.
spirituality. It's like if you have been exposed to darkness, you're more drawn to light. You have to have both to recognize God.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm coming from as well. Most of the truly spiritual people that I've met have got there through crisis, but not all of them, which is why I couldn't say a one. A lot of them, but not all of them. And all of the people who I deal with, I see them as spiritual people, regardless of where they're at in their lives. And so I work with a lot of people that have got a lot of difficulties, vulnerable kids, vulnerable families. And I always see them as being potential awliya, potential saints. So you see a drunk in the street, and I see them thinking, he's only drunk because he needs to get drunk, because he can't face reality. But if he could just understand reality, he wouldn't need to drink, and then he'll have something else to. So I know where you're coming from, and so I can appreciate that. Did anyone put a 5 for that? They totally disagree with this and think this is completely un-Islamic and this has nothing to do with Sufism. I didn't come here for this rubbish. Nobody said that? That's a pity. Please, somebody say they... 4? What? You did a 4. So you're kind of moving towards that disagreeing bit. Can you explain why you seem to be so in odds with Abdul-Hadi? Because he could throw you out, you know that. Anyway, sorry. He won't throw you out. This is co-reflection discussion.
Because we felt for some people, religion can be,
well, sometimes it could be like that, but it's like...
it's for those who are afraid of hell.
Yeah.
Could be, but very rarely. And
I mean, that could be used as an example, like to scare children, but it's still not that reason why people choose religion. It's more to like fulfill and carry on the tradition of...
Yeah. So the last bit you don't have a problem with. It's the first bit that you're kind of worried about. Yeah, that's... Yeah.
That's great. I was thinking, meanwhile you guys were talking, like many of the times it's also like when one chooses the spirituality part, how it comes, like the concept of like getting somewhere, like deeper realization, then the hell breaks basically to clear, because that's sometimes the path requires a cleansing. So, but if one has been there before, maybe it's easier to come to a destination which one who chooses the path, like without any struggle or some kind of on a micro scale, but then meets the macro afterwards.
Yeah, because a lot of... Yeah, I get you. Right, sisters. Anyone want to comment on what we've said or tell me your scores or help, please?
We said 3.
Yeah.
Agreed on 3.
You agreed naturally on 3 because you're kind of balanced. You're sort of down spot in the middle. Part of it's true, but part of it ain't true. Yeah. So what a part of it is, would you say, is the reality of this? Where's there a reality? Where's there a truth in this?
Well, I can agree on you have to go through hell, but I think it can be for religious people and for spiritual.
You know, Jung, he said that religion was... I'll get the exact quote next time, but it's something to the effect that religion is only for people who are protected. Religion has been created to stop people having a direct experience of God. I think that was what he said. So in other words, religion is there to stop you from having spirituality. And I didn't put that out there because I know that your organisation has a lot of rubbish. And there's no point in debating something which is... But there's a point in there that religion and spirituality, in this kind of approach, is almost suggesting they're two separate things. And that's why I wanted to find whether people felt that what we're talking about here in this book is separate to Islam, or is it part? Sheikh, what would you comment on that statement before I tell you where I got it from?
Well, I think it's very difficult
decide in how much you agree with that statement before you have defined what you mean by the word religion.
Good. I told you he's going to keep us straight. And I think that's perhaps what we're going to do as we go through the book. And I didn't really expect us to get to grip. But I'll tell you where I got that from. It's actually from an alcoholic who was going through a program, Alcoholics Anonymous program in America. And it was quoted in a book called The Spirituality of Imperfection. The Spirituality of Imperfection. And it's interesting because in there he's arguing that imperfection is actually what spirituality is about and not perfection. Now I find that difficult because the Prophet ﷺ talks about aspiration towards perfection and he is the perfect being. So in some ways there's this concept of total imperfection and there's this concept of perfection, or there's these two stations, and we're somewhere on this journey between the two. But most of us start off very much in imperfection. And if we've started there and we know where we're going, we've kind of got a path. But if we think we're here, you ain't. And you're not going on a journey. You're actually wasting your life because you think you've arrived and you haven't. And that's one of the problems with Sufis, or more generally religious people. If you think you've got it, you probably haven't. And that's why this concept of imperfection being part of spirituality is important. Because what we do is we start the path with astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. You can't move forward unless you recognize where you are. I've got the quote, actually. One of the main functions of formalized religion is to protect people against a direct experience of God. That's what Young wrote. Then we'll come back to that another time. Right, one more statement I'm going to throw out to you for between 1 and 5, right? Those who know do not say. And those who say do not know. I'll say it again. Those who know do not say, and those who say do not know. 1 to 5. I'll give you 2 minutes to work out where you stand. I'm hoping somebody's going to give me a 5 and a 1 here. Right, I'll give you another minute or so to think about this one. Right. Time up. One of the ladies, any of the ladies groups.
She said something really wise.
Please. Let's share wisdom. We're here to share.
Well, I just said Subhan Rabbika Rabbil Izzati Amma Yasifun. So if no is with a capital K, then we can't speak about it. It's beyond speaking. So if we mean big K, then absolutely one, I agree totally. If we mean little K, well, we could argue for.
All right, so if it's a little k, those who know with a little k do not say, then that's, you disagree. But if those who know with a big K, who know who Allah is, they don't say anything about it. And those who say, and talk, and talk, and talk, and talk, and talk, They don't know with a big K. I like that. That's why she should be here and I should be sitting there. Right? I don't think there's anything to say after that. Has anyone got anything to say after that? Does anybody have anything to say after that? Sheikh Muhammad Muslim, please. Waqad afta. The one who really gives a fatwa is the one who says, I don't know. The reason why I like that is because it is very close to what we're trying to get to in Sufism, is that, was it Hassan al-Basri who said, or one of the very, very early scholars, said that tasawwuf previously was a reality without a name. Junaid. And now it's a name without a reality. It was a reality without a name, and now it's a name without a reality. In the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we'll see this from one of the first hadith that's quoted, is that there was everything of tasawwuf. It's just nobody called it tasawwuf because it was Islam. They just lived Islam. And they didn't talk and talk and talk. They just lived. As Sheikh Muhammad Muslim, they just were. And that's why Abu Bakr as-Siddiq is said to have placed stones in his mouth so that he didn't speak. And some of the scholars have commented on that. Was actually because his hal, his state was so great that he shouldn't talk because he wasn't to divulge. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, he narrated 4,000 odd hadith. And he says that's just a fraction of what I could have narrated. Meaning he kept things back because there were things that weren't there to be shared. It wasn't because they didn't know. It was because it wasn't necessary. Because they're things that are transmitted or things that are being lived, which are not to be talked about. They were just lived. The reason why we talk about them now is because we don't live them. So we need to go back to things like, what were the companions like? What did they actually do? How were they? And when we used were, that's the past tense, third part of the word to be. What were they? So when we look at tasawwuf, if we're looking just as a science, you're not going to get anything. But if you're looking, what were the companions? What were the great awliya? What made them who they are? How did they live? How did they behave? Then you start to get a reality, and you don't talk. So that thing about those who know, they don't say. And if you've looked at any of the great awliya, alhamdulillah, last year we were blessed with having Sheikh Afifuddin here. I've travelled with Sheikh Afifuddin, and I spent time with Sheikh Afifuddin, and he hardly ever says anything. He hardly ever says anything. He just is. And there are other scholars who I've met who say even less than that. They just are. So what you get from them is just having this company, and it's almost as if things are transmitted by who they are. Now that takes us to, so what is tasawwuf then? And the reason why I have a difficulty with that title of the spirituality of imperfection is because some of the definitions of tasawwuf are exactly taken from a hadith where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked by Sayyidina Jibril, "Akhbirni an al-ihsan." Tell me what ihsan is. Tell me what excellence is. Tell me what perfection is. And he said, "An ta'budu Allah ka'annaka tarahu, fa in lam takun tarahu, fa innahu yarak." Worship, that's the first word. Worship Allah as if you can see Him, witnessing Him. So your worship should be a witnessing of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And ta'budu Allah ka'annaka tarahu. That's perfection. فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ. But if you're not perfect, فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ, you should know فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. So there's actually both elements to this. There is perfection, which is something which you aspire to, and that's what tasawwuf is. And the question that was put to me was, so, are you a Sufi? And the answer is no. I ain't a Sufi. Why? Because I ain't perfect. I'm much more at that imperfect side, Alcoholics Anonymous point, than I am anywhere near the Shaykh Afifuddin, Waliullah. I know where I am. So I ain't a Sufi. So I shouldn't be talking about Sufism. Good job I'm not. I'm just here asking you questions. Right? But at the same time, Sufi has got this very specific meaning of a person who, according to Habib Umar bin Hafiz, one of our scholars living today, may Allah protect him, he said that the Sufi is the one who has moved from the state of ilm al-yaqeen, of knowing with certainty, to ayn al-yaqeen, to witnessing certainty. That's what the Sufi is. And that ain't me. But then he goes on to say, the mutasawwif is the one who recognizes that there's a path, and recognizes that this path will lead them to witnessing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they actively strive towards that goal. And that person is not a Sufi, because he hasn't arrived. He's what we call a mutasawwif, an aspirant towards that station. And then he gave another third term. He says mutashabbi. And I don't know what that means, Sheikh. Please.
Maybe someone who tries to look like a Sufi.
Okay. Mutashabbi is one who does, tashabba means to appear, looks like. It's somebody that looks like something. So a mutashabbi is somebody who looks, so mutashabbi in this sense, as Shaykh is saying, he looks like a Sufi, or he dresses like a Sufi, or he appears like a Sufi, or he takes on the Sufi stuff. He takes on the Sufi uniform, and he uses Sufi language. But he's not a mutasawwif. The mutasawwif is the one who's got a goal and is travelling that path. So, is he using this as a negative term? Al-mutashabbi here. If I were to say, oh, you're a mutashabbi bi Sufi, would you take that as an insult?
I would actually personally take it as a compliment.
You would, because you probably are a real Sufi, that's why. But most of us might take it as an insult. Would anybody take it as an insult? Or is it just me? You would. Right, you shouldn't. The reason why is because why would anybody... It depends. Most people, like usually, when I teach here, I would usually wear a white thobe. And then I take it off as soon as I get to the door. And people know me. One of the sisters came, she greeted me, and after she came, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't recognize you. Why? Because she'd only seen me with a thobe and a amama and stuff. And there's times, the only picture that I have of myself which has been framed is at Abrar's wedding. I haven't even got a picture of myself at my own wedding. And one of the reasons was because somebody saw this photograph and they loved this photograph of me at Abrar's wedding. And I quite like the photograph. And the reason why is because I have my little Idris, who was very little at that time, and I was just giving him a kiss. And that's why I like the photo. But the interesting thing is, I actually look quite smart. And that's also why I liked it, because I can't remember looking smart very often. I had a full turban on. And I had an immaculately ironed thobe with an abaya and a stick and a shawl And when I walked into the mosque, people moved out of the way. And I said, I always moved my stick, yes. And I've only ever done that twice. Once was at Abrar's wedding, and one was another guy's wedding called Rahat. And I ended up at the end of that throwing the stick at someone. Oh, that's another. Maybe I've now said it. I mean, but I did that for a particular reason. If I turned up in jeans, excuse me, at his wedding, how would that have seemed? What message would that have given about my relationship to Abrar? I really went looking the part. And I say looking the part because I looked the part deliberately with a specific intention that this is the marriage of my good friend and his bride. And it's a special occasion that deserves the merit of an imam who's been asked to do this duty. Not his pal. I'm not going there as Abrar's pal. So when I drove down here, I wore jeans. But on that day, I wore the full garment. The only time I wore it in Glasgow was at another friend's wedding. And the reason why was because the lady... By the way, you keeping an eye on the time? Because you were supposed to tell me 5 minutes.
I don't know how long time you have.
Because I'm just going to go on until somebody says stop. But I may as well finish the story now. So he said, I came and this girl had nobody. Her father was a priest. So obviously he can't give her away in an Islamic wedding. And she had nobody. She wasn't well respected in the community because she was recently converted. She recently embraced Islam. And she was very shy and timid. And I just wanted everybody to know that I'm her wali. I'm representing her in this wedding, in this marriage. So I did the full works. And I told people, I gave a dars first, and on the dars it says, Sheikh Abdalaziz. And I never used, I says, note, it says Sheikh Abdalaziz. I am a sheikh. And then at the end of the thing, I said, and if anybody ever questions this sister, you should know that Sheikh Abdalaziz performed the wedding in front of you as witnesses. And if anybody, including you, in fact, especially you, upset her, you have to remember that she will go to Sheikh Abdalaziz, who is Scottish, and he will break your legs. That's not part of the khutbah normally, but on this occasion it was appropriate. And I gave the full works. And I think she appreciated that. And 4 women came up to me after that to say, please, could you do my nikah for me, please? 4 Scottish sisters all came up to ask me, could I perform their nikah? Because they felt the presence. It was just a turban. But it meant more than just a turban. So sometimes the way you dress will count if the intention behind that is out of love. So if you follow the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you do it because you love him. And the reward will not be for the clothes. It will be for the love of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is manifest through the clothes. So, if you love the people of Tasawwuf, al-mar'u ma'a man ahab, the person will be counted amongst those he loves. So, if you dress and take on the appearance of the Sufis, Yawm al-Qiyamah, the Sufis will all stand up and say, okay, all those people that were pretending to be Sufis, if they did it out of love, stand with them. Al-mar'u ma'a man ahab. So there's the Sufi, there's Mutasawwif, and there is the Mutashabbih. And Mutashabbih is all right, so you're right to take it as a compliment. What time is it? I'm sure time is up. Yeah. Sorry? I was hoping he was going to throw something at me. Afwan, sorry if I've... Well, I know I've overrun. Afwan minkum.
Do we need a short break? Yeah, okay. 10-minute break, and then have Mustafa